So thank you everyone for joining us today. So we're going to talk a little bit about applying to private universities and to talk about Tulane University. So we do have a admission representative today, Jeff, who's here to talk to you about Tulane University and answer any questions that you all may have about private colleges, how to apply, and financial aid. So I'm going to go ahead and let Jeff take the lead.
Well, thank you all so much for having me. Hey, everyone. My name is Jeff, and I am the Director of Undergraduate Admission at Tulane University. We are located right in the middle of beautiful New Orleans, Louisiana. And thank you so much for taking some time out of your probably already very virtual worlds and Zoom-filled worlds to hear a little bit about Tulane, and particularly a little bit about the application process to private universities. I myself am a Tulane graduate. I graduated from Tulane with the class of 2005, and I had a double major in marketing and management from our business school. And my story is kind of unique because I've actually only had one first day of work my entire life. So I actually started working in the Office of Admission at Tulane about 6 weeks after I graduated from the university. So I literally walked across the stage at Tulane's graduation. The next day I found out that I'd been hired as an admission representative and started working quite a bit shortly after that. And then that was 15 years ago, and I'm now the Director of Undergraduate Admission. I spent a lot of time in the Los Angeles area recruiting from a number of high schools in the area. And I also do spend a lot of time at community-based organizations as well, like the Fulfillment Fund. I'm very passionate about creating an institution that's really reflective of the country that we live in. And so I'm going to be spending a little bit of time talking about what we're all about at Tulane and what you should be kind of thinking about at this point in the college search process. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the tips that I have for when you actually apply for college. And then lastly, I'll give a couple pieces of advice about the financial aid process as well. So for those of y'all that are watching this webinar today that are either high school juniors or maybe even a high school sophomore, I think the big thing that you should be thinking about right now is finding a college that's going to be a great fit. One of the biggest pieces of advice I always give to prospective students is that there's not really any bad universities in America. There's only bad fits. And I really want you to think about that as a high school student. I mean, first of all, you're from Los Angeles, so you have all kinds of amazing opportunities both in LA and throughout the state of California. But then nationwide, there's amazing colleges and universities all around the country. And so the question you should be asking yourself is not, is this the best university? But the question you should be asking yourself is this the best university for me? You know, am I going to fit in at this school? Am I going to flourish at this institution? Am I going to be happy here? So what I want to do is give you 3 questions that you should potentially be asking yourself right now. And these are kind of 3 questions that would allow you to kind of get a sense for if a school will be a good fit for you. 3 questions you can ask yourself right now. 1, how big of a school do I want to go to? Do I feel like I'd fit in at a really big university, a small liberal arts college, or maybe somewhere in the middle? Second question is, who do I want to go to school with? What are the other students going to be like? What are the professors going to be like? Or as you would say in high school, what are the teachers going to be like? And then third is a really important question, and that's where do I want to go to school? And I mean like literally, do I want to be in state? Do I want to be close to my family? Do I want to be far away from my family? Do I want to be in a big city, a small town? And those are 3 questions that allow you to really at this point in the process get a sense if a school is going to be a good fit for you. I'm going to answer these questions for you as it pertains specifically to Tulane, and that should allow you to kind of give a good sense for private universities and kind of what type of opportunities you might have if you end up applying to some of these private schools based on these 3 questions. First question is, how big of a school do you want to go to? In the world of private universities, there's kind of 2 different types of schools. There are research universities and liberal arts colleges. The biggest difference between the 2 is at a university like Tulane, usually they have the full range of graduate schools. So they have a medical school, a law school, PhD programs, MBA programs, master's degrees, etc. So they tend to be really heavily focused on the whole experience of both undergrad and graduate, lots of opportunities for research. On the other side of the spectrum is a liberal arts college. Liberal arts college, for example, in Los Angeles is somewhere like Occidental. Small colleges usually really focused on the undergraduate experience, usually really focused on small class size, really focused on that undergraduate core. Of course, these are 2 misnomers because there are a lot of research that goes on at a liberal arts college, and there's plenty of opportunities to study liberal arts at a research university. But for me, one of the reasons why I love Tulane is that we are a perfect combination of the 2. I feel like Tulane is a really nice medium-sized experience that will give you the benefits of a private research university and also the benefits of a small liberal arts college. We are big enough that we have all the benefits of a big university. We've got a medical school and a law school or Division I sports, all the things you'd want from a big university. We offer all those opportunities for our students. At the same time, we only have around 7,000 undergraduates at Tulane, so we also offer all the benefits of a small college as well. Average class size here is only about 20 students, and the student to faculty ratio is about 8:1. So for us at Tulane, when I went there, I really felt like when I asked that question of how big of a school do I want to go to, I answered that question with, well, I want the best of both worlds. I want a big and a small school combined into one. And I'll give you a couple of examples of why we really are that perfect balance at Tulane. So I mentioned we're a major research university, which means we've got all those great benefits. But one of the things you don't usually see at some of those bigger schools is a little bit of flexibility. You usually see a lot of flexibility at the liberal arts colleges. Well, Tulane's kind of the exception to that rule. We are one of the most flexible universities in the entire country. So if you apply to Tulane and you're admitted to our university, you're automatically admitted into all of our undergraduate majors and all of our undergraduate schools with no separate application required. So what that means is you don't have to apply to be pre-med, you're not applying to be in our business school, you simply are admitted, and all of our schools, our majors, all of our undergraduate programs are available to you. I think this is really valuable because for those of you watching this webinar, some of you might not have any idea what you want to major in yet. And so you might be better off at a small college or a liberal arts school that you can switch your majors as many times as you want. But we give you that benefit at Tulane. So when you become a student here, you can easily, seamlessly switch back and forth between one of our 5 schools. And the great thing about that is it leads to about 35% of our students doing a double major, and then almost 80% of our students doing a major and a minor. I personally myself changed my major 3 times when I was a student at Tulane, and I still had no problem double majoring and minoring in 4 years. Fun fact about me, I actually minored in glass blowing at Tulane. We have the largest glass blowing studio at any college campus in America, and I decided that would be a really cool class to take, and I did. And that's why I love that flexibility that you'll find at a school like Tulane. Just so you do know, we do have 5 undergraduate schools you will be able to choose from here. We offer a School of Liberal Arts. So again, that misnomer that there are liberal arts programs at universities. We offer a School of Science and Engineering with great programs in things like biomedical engineering, neuroscience, etc. We've also got a really strong program in architecture for those of you all that might be considering a career in architecture. We've got a great School of Business, which is, I mentioned, that's where I graduated from. And lastly, one of our major schools, our 5 undergraduate programs that I really, really want to plug right now is our School of Public Health. We are one of only a dozen universities in the entire country that offers a full undergraduate degree program in public health. Now would be a really, 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 really great time to consider a career in public health for very obvious reasons. If you're not as familiar with public health, essentially public health is the study of how a disease will travel through a population of people rather than how it travels through the human body. So essentially our public health students here at Tulane are saying, okay, how do we prevent this thing from spreading, as opposed to a pre-med student who will say, all right, how do we treat a human body once it's already been affected by that disease? So of course, public health students are researching things like coronavirus, but anything from HIV to Ebola virus, how do you control that thing from spreading throughout a community? And interestingly enough, public health saves more lives than medicine. As I mentioned, only about a dozen universities in the country offer an undergraduate degree program in public health, and we are one of them. Public health isn't just disease, though. It's also things like, how do you provide healthy eating options for families that live in low-income neighborhoods and prevent food deserts from happening? Or how do you prevent, teenagers from texting and driving? Like, these are all public health issues that our students research every single day. So the thing I love about Tulane is that we've got all these great benefits of a big university. As I mentioned, kind of in that spectrum of big and small, we're right in the middle of the two. And that's one of the things for me, that first question about how big of a school do you want to go to? Well, if you answer that question with, you kind of want the best of both worlds, Tulane potentially could be a really good fit. I'll give you one other example that illustrates why we're such a great medium-sized experience. So Tulane is big enough that we've got all kinds of different clubs and organizations. Almost 300 different student-led clubs and organizations are available here at Tulane. But we make it really easy to get involved. For example, if you want to write for our newspaper, a lot of big universities will make you wait till your junior or senior year to write for the newspaper. At Tulane, our entire first issue of our newspaper is completely written by our freshmen during their orientation week. Another example, we're a Division I school, but every single student gets free seasons tickets to all of the athletic events that we play in. And we're pretty good at football right now, which I'm excited about. But my favorite example is one of my favorite students at Tulane is a kid by the name of Adam Klein. And 4 years ago, Adam was a freshman at Tulane. And when he was a freshman, he had this idea where he wanted to start his own organization. And some of the bigger schools, it might be a little bit harder to start your own club. They say you need all these signatures and get all these approvals. We do that a little differently at Tulane. We actually allow you to approach your peers, so your fellow students in our student government organization. We have a very active student government, and you approach them with your idea for your new club you want to get started. So Adam approached our student government and he said, I've got this idea. I want to bring a service puppy onto Tulane's campus and I want to train it. And I want this puppy to eventually go on to being an adult dog. And then I want to give it to a family with disabilities. So our students were like, I don't really know about a dog living in the dorms and walking around the library, but they gave him the budget for it. They gave him the approval that he needed to start this organization. And that was 4 years ago. Today, to this day, we have had 97 dogs come through our campus as a part of what's called Two-Step. It stands for Tulane University Service Training Dog Program. Our students literally train puppies. Eventually, they go on to a family with disabilities. And I give you this example to show you that we're that perfect medium-sized school that has all kinds of benefits and research and opportunities and the budget to do things, but we're small enough that we make everything easy to get off the ground. And anything you want to do, we make it really easy to do so. So again, thinking about what school is going to be a good fit for you, starting with that question of size can really allow you to see, do you flourish much better at a big research university, a big rah-rah state school, maybe a small liberal arts college with that really small class size and the intimacy? Or are you someone like me that would be very much flourishing at a school that gives you the best of both worlds, which is exactly what Tulane provides our students? The second question I pose to you all is, who do you want to go to school with? What are the other students going to be like? Will they be like you? Will they be different from you? And what are your professors going to be like? One of the things I love the most about Tulane in terms of our student body is that we are the most geographically diverse school in the country. Our average freshman travels 988 miles from their hometown to go to Tulane. So you might be thinking, if I go to Tulane, I'll be, halfway across the country. Well, the good thing is almost all of our students are coming from that far. As I mentioned, the average distance is almost 1,000 miles. Top 4 most represented states in our current freshman class. Number 1 is right there in California. Number 2 is New York. Number 3 is Louisiana. Number 4 is Illinois. And if you look at that on a map, it's like the 4 corners of America. So this is really important because I think that students will learn the best when you learn from people who are different from you. Especially you all coming from Los Angeles, coming from such a diverse place, you really learn when you're listening to people who are different. And I remember my first class that I took when I was a freshman at Tulane was my English 101 course. And I got there on the first day of school. And there was 14 students in my class, and we were from 14 different states. And I just remember thinking that was so valuable just to learn from different people, different socioeconomic backgrounds and political beliefs. Now, with that said, I think Tulane does a really good job with our diversity in terms of where our students come from. But as director of admission, one of the big goals that I have right now is to really increase diversity in a lot of other ways on our campus. And what I mean by this is I believe that Tulane has some work to do in terms of creating a campus that's more reflective of the country that we live in and reflective of the city that we live in. And so what that means is that Tulane needs more students who are the first in their family to go to college. We need more students of color. We need more students from international backgrounds. We need more students from, rural communities. I think all of these things are important because, as I mentioned, you really will learn the best when you're learning from people who are different from you. And I think we're on the right track at Tulane. The last 3 freshman classes we've recruited have been the most diverse in terms of students of color that we've ever had, which I'm proud of, but I think we still have some work to do. If you are an underrepresented minority, I think the big question you should be asking is not, is the school recruiting more students of color? But the big question you should be asking is, what will my experience be like when I step foot on your campus? So I'm coming as an underrepresented minority to a predominantly white institution like Tulane. What will my experience be like? What type of support can I get? Or, I'm the first in my family to go to college. What resources will be available to me at your institution? These are questions you should be asking admission officers. What I can tell you I'm really proud at Tulane is that 3 years ago, we opened our Center for Academic Equity. And the center at Tulane is amazing because what it does is really bridge the gap for any single student, regardless of your background, regardless of the color of your skin, how much money is in your bank account, if you're a member of the LGBT community, et cetera. And so I'll give you a couple of examples of things that they do. We've got this great opportunity at Tulane called Tulane Takeover. And Tulane Takeover is usually in about 8 cities, and it's during fall break. And what Tulane does is we have these huge mega career fairs in 8 different cities: Boston, Chicago, LA, New York. And essentially you fly home for your fall break and you meet with all these potential employers to get your internship lined up or to create a great career prepared for you after you graduate. So it's amazing opportunities because we have such a national draw. It's great if you have the money to go home for fall break, which not everyone does. So I was with one of my favorite students at Tulane a couple months ago. His name is Ray Mel. He's a freshman at Tulane from Sacramento. And I asked him how he spent his fall break. And he said, "You're never going to believe this, Jeff, but the Center for Academic Equity paid for me. They gave me a grant to fly to New York City, put me up in a hotel for a night, and I participated in Tulane Takeover in New York City and lined up my first internship opportunity for this summer." Ray Mel is a low-income student, first in his family to go to college. And so what we're trying to do here at Tulane is to make sure that no matter who you are, where you come from, that you will have the same equitable experience and the ability to be the best version of yourself at Tulane, no matter what. Last week, one of my favorite students, again, his name is Adolfo. He's a senior at Tulane. He just was elected our student body president. And I wrote him a letter of recommendation because he's having some difficulty getting back and forth to his home and getting internet accessibility. and his internship that he had lined up just got canceled. And so he actually was able to land a new internship here in New Orleans, but he doesn't have a place to stay or the money to cover this internship because it's an internship that doesn't have any pay. So I wrote him a letter of recommendation to the Center for Academic Equity, and they gave him a grant to stay here in New Orleans this summer and gave him a grant to have his living expenses covered because it's an unpaid internship. So what we want to do is make sure that no matter where you're from or how much money you have, you are going to have an incredible experience and so many opportunities here at Tulane. And so I think we're on the right track here with creating a campus that's a lot more inclusive and provides opportunities for everyone. So again, if you fall into any of these categories of students, you should definitely be asking these questions about what your experience will be like. For us at Tulane, we really value the diversity that our students bring. We are on the right track, I think, with creating a campus that is more diverse than it has been in the past, but I do still think we have some work to do. And for me as the director of admission, that's absolutely one of my top priorities. The third question I posed to you all at this point in the process is, where do you want to go to school? So are you thinking maybe big school? Are you thinking you want to be in a big city, a small town? Do you want to be close to your parents, or do you want to be as far away from them as possible? Location is a big part of the college search process. And for me, I'm very biased because I think that Tulane happens to be located in one of the best cities on the entire planet. I love New Orleans very much as an amazing college city because it provides so many opportunities for our students. First, socially, I think New Orleans might be one of the most socially rich cities in America. We celebrate everything we possibly can. Fun fact, there are more festivals than there are days of the school year here in New Orleans. Right before we shut down for coronavirus, we were on a huge festival binge. We had our fried chicken festival, our mac and cheese festival, our cheese and wine festival, and the Po' Boy festival back to back weekends. So you will never be hungry here in the city of New Orleans. New Orleans is also an incredible city to study and to educate yourself in terms of research and internships. New Orleans is one of the most historically rich cities in the country. It's the birthplace of jazz music. It's where people like Tennessee Williams and William Faulkner and Mark Twain wrote their great works of art. I don't know if any of you have read the book Confederacy of Dunces, but I was actually walking my dog at lunch today, and I just realized about 3 blocks from my house is this historic landmark of the home that John Kennedy Toole lived in when he wrote that book. So really, you never know the history that you will stumble in by living in this city. It has some of the oldest African-American neighborhoods anywhere in the country. The neat thing about this is that so much of what you study here at Tulane takes place throughout the city of New Orleans. So if you want to do, history, you might do an internship at the National World War II Museum. 2 of my very lucky students got to do an internship with the New Orleans Pelicans and meet Zion this year. So the city provides so many resources and internships. And so thinking about location, do you think you would thrive in a city? Are you somewhere that thinks you would much rather stay a lot more on campus and really experience those as well? I think New Orleans and Tulane are the type of place where you will really experience the city and all we've got to offer. And that leads me to the last thing that's really important to us in terms of our location, and that's the commitment that we have to our community. I mentioned I graduated from Tulane, and actually what I didn't mention is that my story is even more unique because I graduated from Tulane in 2005, started working in the admission office in July, and 6 weeks after that, Hurricane Katrina hit the city of New Orleans. Oh, there's my office right there. So my first job was actually working for a closed university in a totally uninhabitable city. And so it's interesting because all these emotions that a lot of us are going through right now with uncertainty and anxiety and the fear of the future, that's all very familiar to us here at Tulane in New Orleans because we went through all this 15 years ago with Katrina. But I always tell students, it's remarkable the human spirit and the way we can find ourselves getting through these biggest challenges, because I oftentimes find it's life's biggest challenges that change us the most. And Tulane's a great example of that. After Hurricane Katrina, we became the first university in America to have a public service component of graduation. And now to this day, every one of our students still does a full-scale public service project in their junior and senior year that ties their major into our community. It's amazing because it can be a research project, internship, study abroad. No matter what you do, you will make an impact into our community. I'll give you a quick example of it. We've got a wonderful program in architecture here at Tulane, as I mentioned. And in our architecture school, we've got this neat program called the Urban Build. Urban Build is usually about 16 students who are selected in the first semester of their junior year. And in the first semester of their junior year, they spend their entire semester, each of them in the design studio, building and designing a model for a home that potentially could be built here in New Orleans. They all build a model for a home. In the second semester, they vote on their favorite home out of those 16 designs, and then they build that home in the city of New Orleans. And I think this is cool for 2 reasons. One, what better way to learn about architecture than actually going out, designing a home, and then going out and literally building it? They've completed 16 homes here in New Orleans. But on the flip side, imagine being a 21-year-old architecture student and handing a set of keys over to a family who is purchasing their first home at cost in a low-income neighborhood. that's like a life-changing experience for everyone involved. And that's really what we're all about here at Tulane, is that sense of spirit of our community and resiliency and making an impact in the most positive way into our communities. I always tell students, you should never put any stock in college rankings, except for the rankings that Tulane make Tulane look good. One of those being the fact that the last 4 years in a row, Tulane has been ranked #1 on the Princeton Review's list of students most engaged in community service. And so that's a part of our core curriculum. It's really who we are at Tulane and very much a part of living here in the city of New Orleans. So that's kind of 3 questions answered specifically as they pertain to Tulane. It's my hope kind of as you start to navigate this search process, you're really thinking about those questions and thinking about where you think you'll fit in, because that's really a good sense of really where you'll be the most happy and be able to be the best version of yourself. Shifting gears a little bit, talking about the application process, now's a great time to just start navigating, what schools are looking for, start thinking about maybe filling out the common application, which will be available on August 1st. Tulane does not have an application fee, and we are on the common application. So we make it very, very easy to apply. I always recommend students take advantage of applying early action. And that deadline is November 15th. There is no application fee, as I mentioned, and we'll give you a decision usually by winter break at the latest, and then you have your entire spring semester to make up your decision. I would also strongly encourage you all to look into our multicultural fly-in program. It's for students who might be a student of color, the first in their family to go to college. It's called Preview TU. Hopefully, if it's going to be on this fall, it'll take place in October, and we'll fly in about 180 students from all around the country to experience New Orleans and Tulane and really get a sense of this will be a good fit for you. In the application process itself, when you fill out the common application overall, we're looking, of course, at your academic experience. So the grades that you've gotten in high school are the most important thing. We no longer require the SAT or ACT. So for those of you that are juniors in high school, you don't have to worry about submitting your test scores. I know that's a big piece of anxiety for you all right now. So I'd recommend not even having to worry about it by not submitting your test at all. We'll look most heavily upon your grades. We also look at your essay. So whatever you choose to write about, keeping in mind that the essay is not going to be the make or break factor in your application. It's just one nice opportunity for you to tell us a little story about something interesting about you that we don't see in some other part of your application. We also do have the why are you applying to Tulane statement, which is very, very important that you fill out. So we say it's optional, but it's not optional. You should definitely fill that out. One great way to kind of get some research done for that is reaching out to some of our current students. We've got almost 8,000 students that are home right now and would give anything to be here in New Orleans back at Tulane, and they're bored and they really want to talk about Tulane. So if you go on our website, you can just click the button that says meet our tour guides, and you can interact with some of our current students and they can tell you all about their experiences. I guarantee you they'd love to set up a FaceTime call to chat with you about Tulane. And then when you fill out your why Tulane statement, you can actually mention these students that you've interacted with. And then lastly, of course, we'll look at your letters of recommendation from your school counselor. The final thing I want to mention is a little about scholarships and financial aid. Private schools are expensive. There's no 2 ways about it, but I think it's important to remember, working with a great community-based organization like the Fulfillment Fund, they're going to help you a lot with the financial aid process of applying to schools with financial aid. So you're going to see some big numbers in terms of private school cost of attendance. Usually they begin with a 7, and it's usually anywhere from $70,000 to $80,000 a year. But it's really important to remember that the sticker price is very rarely what the actual cost of attendance will be. Private schools do a really, really good job of getting as close as they can to be meeting your full demonstrated need. And we do that with a combination of need-based aid and merit-based aid. Merit-based aid is based on your merit. So as a student, it's based on your academic experiences. It's based on your letters of recommendation. If you have had the ability to take the SAT or ACT and you're really happy with your score, you're welcome to send that into that to be considered. And so many schools will have scholarships you can apply for. I encourage you to spend some time researching them. And then we also offer need-based financial aid. And need-based financial aid is based on your family's financial ability to afford college. So for example, if Tulane costs $70,000 a year, what we'll do is we will look at your what's called FAFSA and the CSS profile. These terms might not be familiar to you yet, but they will be very, very soon. And again, the Fulfillment Fund can help you out with all of that. But the FAFSA and the CSS profile will allow us to determine what's called your expected family contribution. We call it the EFC for short. And schools that meet full need are going to try to meet the gap between what we think your family can afford and our cost of attendance. So essentially they'll take the total cost of attendance, they'll subtract your expected family contribution, and then we'll fill in the gap. Many schools meet full need. Some schools like Tulane get as close as we can to meeting full need, but we are committed. If you do come to one of our fly-in programs, we are committed to meeting your full need if you come to one of those events. So again, definitely check out our Preview TU, stands for Preview Tulane Multicultural Fly-in Program. Lastly, I'll mention that Tulane is very, very lucky to be partnered with the Posse Foundation in Los Angeles. Some of you on this webinar today might be familiar with the Posse Foundation. Posse is a foundation that's nationwide, but headquartered in 14 different cities around America, Los Angeles being one of them. Los Angeles Posse is partnered with, I believe, 10 different universities around the country, schools like Wisconsin, Tulane, I believe Pepperdine is a Posse Scholar partnership for Los Angeles, but don't quote me on that. Essentially, at this point in the process, now will be a great time to go through the nomination process. If you are nominated for Posse, you'll go through a series of interviews that will kind of culminate this December. And again, Tulane is a partner with Los Angeles Posse, so we select 10 students that receive a full tuition scholarship through the Posse Foundation, and it's an amazing way to make your college dreams at a school like Tulane come true. So those are kind of all the basic facts about our university in general. I wanted to make sure I covered it all in about a half an hour, particularly as it pertains to scholarships and financial aid. I do see we have a couple of slides up here, but I would of course be happy to kind of open it up and answer any questions that y'all might have.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, please either, and you feel comfortable either speaking out, or you can also type them into the chat box and we'll go ahead and read them out. So if you have any questions about financial aid, Tulane in particular, the common application, which is where you will be applying to private schools, please type in your messages in the chat box.
And there's no bad questions, trust me. If you're worried if your question sounds stupid, it doesn't. Any questions, fine with me.
Okay, so while we're waiting, we're gonna go ahead and play, while we're waiting for some questions, we're gonna go ahead and play a quick little video about Tulane so you can get, so you can see what the campus looks like, and it's just very brief, so you guys can start asking questions in the chat box as you're watching the video.
Oh, I'm glad you're showing this video too. The young man on the left-hand side, Trajan Shelton, is a Los Angeles native. He went to high school in LA, and he's actually now a junior here at Tulane.
Oh, awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and play.
I'm Caroline from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm studying Public Health, International Development, and Psychology.
What's up, guys? My name is Trajan Shelton from Los Angeles, California, studying International Relations with a minor in Chinese.
Welcome to Tulane's virtual tour.
Click around to learn more about campus from our current students.
Tulane was founded in 1834 as a public medical college of Louisiana.
In 1884, the name was changed to Tulane University, named after Paul Tulane, a wealthy merchant from Princeton, New Jersey.
Paul Tulane actually initially wanted to endow his $1 million to Princeton University, but they wouldn't change their name to Tulane, so he came down here to us.
He's currently buried in New Jersey, facing us, Tulane in the south, and his back to Princeton University.
We moved to this uptown campus in the 1890s, and campus is now 3/4 of a mile long and half a mile wide.
The campus is split up into 3 sections. So behind us, we have the academic quad, and followed by that, we have student life and dorms. And then at the very end, we have athletics. The campus is very accessible, only a 15-minute walk from one end to the other, so you won't have any problems getting to classes. One of our great resources, which is right across the street from campus, is Audubon Park. Audubon Park has a golf course, a zoo, and just great spots where students can relax and exercise. Beyond that, we have a smaller park right off the Mississippi River known as the Fly, where lots of students like to socialize and hang out.
Right between Audubon Park and campus is St. Charles Avenue, which is home to our streetcar line. You can jump on the streetcar to head down to restaurants, festivals, great spots in the city, and it only takes 30 minutes to get downtown. So that's all we have for y'all today. We hope you enjoy the rest of your virtual tour. And roll wave!
And that's just the very beginning of our virtual tour. So if you're ever interested in seeing more about Tulane and more about New Orleans, that you could just go Google Tulane virtual tour, and that's the first thing that'll come up. So a couple questions here. Do SATs play a major role in our college application? So as I mentioned, we are test optional right now, and that's in response to how hard it is to take the test because of all the cancellations. And many, many universities around the country are going test optional for the junior class just because of how challenging it's been to get the test taken. So for us, it doesn't play a role at all. So I would encourage you not to submit your testing. Now, if you're hoping for a very large full tuition scholarship, we do offer some you can apply for. Posse excluded, of course, but then we would probably look a little bit more if you've taken the SAT or ACT. But again, I don't necessarily recommend sending it at this point because it's just making things more complicated for you all, as it's a lot harder to get that test taken. Can you explain the difference between early action and early decision? Why do you encourage students to apply early action? Great question. So early action is non-binding. Early decision is binding. I think early action is the best opportunity to make sure you're giving yourself the most amount of options. I think early decision is a good option for some students who have really visited and done their research and they know that the financial aid is going to be working out as well. I don't necessarily always recommend it because it really locks you in. With early action, it's the same benefits, but it's a lot more freedom. Yes, the admit rate is a little bit higher for early decision, but I still think it's worthwhile to apply early action because that also puts you in contention for a lot more merit-based scholarships as well. So I always recommend students consider early action. When's the best time to start working on your personal statement? I would say probably sometime in the middle of the summer. So the best personal statements I read are the ones that are able to tell a really good story. So I think a lot of times students feel like they have to have some big event or tragic experience. And sometimes the best essays I read are just a really nicely written story. I would recommend at this point probably not writing about coronavirus, only because every single high school student in the entire planet is going through coronavirus, and it's going to be really, really, really difficult to kind of stand out if you're writing about that topic because you're going to be up against millions of other students writing about the same topic. So maybe this opportunity has been giving you some time to kind of think about your worldviews or your academic area of interest, and you can certainly talk about that. But I would recommend not writing about coronavirus. I would recommend thinking about a great story, kind of expressing that to us in the form of an essay. The question is, do you have any tips for the new Common App question that addresses coronavirus? Yeah, I would say if you're going to use that section, I would recommend you all explain but not complain. So there's going to be a lot of fatigue in admission officers reading about coronavirus in November and December when we have to relive all this stuff over and over and over again. So I would say if you're going to use that section, I would encourage you to do so, but don't complain. Just literally state the facts. Say, I can tell you personally, my coronavirus experience has been a little bit challenging. I've had to cancel my wedding. My fiance got coronavirus. I got coronavirus. My grandpa just got out of a week in the hospital with coronavirus. So there's a way to kind of present that, but without complaining about it. Everyone's going through something, and it's not to diminish the experiences that everyone are having, because these are all real, difficult, challenging situations. But the better you can kind of just express, what your experience was like. Did it impact your grades at all? Let us know. But I don't necessarily I wouldn't encourage you to kind of express a lot of, a sob story, for lack of a better word. I don't mean to really use that in a negative connotation. I think it's important to just state the facts, show some resiliency with it, and understand that this has been tough for a lot of people, certainly a lot tougher for some more than others. And that's important for us to know, but I think it's much easier for us to just kind of know the basic facts, explain the situations that you were in, and kind of go from there. The question is, how do you research majors on your website, and can students create their own majors? Yeah, so now is a great time to be researching majors in general. I kind of gave a plug for some of our majors, whether it's architecture or public health. And now's a great time to check out those. And yes, absolutely, we encourage students to combine 2 different majors. About 40% of our students will, and then pick a double major, a major, and a minor. Totally up to y'all. The question is, what's the best Common App question? Common App question. Okay, so it's funny you asked that, because I guarantee you 90% of admission officers out there don't even know what the questions are. It's just, we really have no preference. So one of the topics is a topic of your choice. The questions are really just there to kind of help you generate some ideas and get some ideas going. So there certainly is no best question or not. And as I mentioned, I don't even think a lot of admission officers even know what the questions are. So don't feel like you're beholden to any of those questions at all. Can you talk about your study abroad programs and what study abroad is? So great question. 50% of Tulane students will study abroad. at some point in their Tulane career. And the other good news is your scholarship and financial aid will travel with you when you study abroad. We have a very strong program all throughout Europe, but we go to 44 different countries, and Tulane has one of the top ranked Latin American studies programs in the country. So we go to all over Latin America, Brazil, Argentina, Costa Rica, Cuba, Chile. We've also got great programs all throughout the Middle East, Africa. I studied abroad in Asia when I was a student at Tulane. So I'd strongly encourage you all to look into studying abroad while you're in college.
I'm going to ask about the why Tulane essay, because you said it's so important for kids to answer that particular question. And you give 800 words for students to explore that. So can you speak about like how students should tackle that essay?
Great question. So that optional statement is not optional. You should definitely fill it out. And we always recommend students do that. It's, as I mentioned, what we're looking for you to do is find out if this school is going to be a good fit for you. So rather than just kind of rattling off the facts and figures that you read from the website, as I mentioned, the best way you can do this right now is to reach out to some current students. So reach out to some Tulane students, maybe from California, or students that you feel like you have something in common with, and just chat with them. Shoot them an email, see if they'd be interested in setting up a call. If you're having a hard time getting in touch with students or no one is responding to you, that might be a good hint about that university. But if students are immediately getting back to you and sharing you their experiences, then you've got some great stuff to write about in that why Tulane statement. So rather than just telling us, Tulane has 8,000 students and is in New Orleans, that sounds like a robot. Instead, really do some research and really see, is this a place you'll fit in? And the best place to do that, as I mentioned, is our current students.